Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, 8 lines from the top at the 2 dots. Shekoin Godel Makriv Chelik Barosh V'Noitel Chelik Barosh. The Kohen Gadol says he has the first right to be makriv any korban, and he also takes a portion, any portion that he wants. Ton Rabbanon, we learned in the Brisa, Ketzin Makriv Chelik Barosh. How is it that the Kohen Gadol can be makriv whatever he wants? So Gemara explains, the Brisa explains, Omer Oilazeh Ani Makriv. He can say, I want to be makriv this oila, Mincha Zu Ani Makriv, or I want to be makriv this korban mincha. Meaning that even though there's a different mishmaras and there's different batei avos and there's different rotations, but the Kohen Gadol can choose and say, no, this particular korban I want to be makriv it. How is that he has the right to take in the first portion when they divide up the portions that are eaten from the korbanos? He says, I want to eat the meat from this korban chatas. Asham zani oichol, I want to eat the meat from this korban asham. So we'll see shortly, what does that mean? Does it mean he can take the entire part of it, or that he divides it? V'noitel chala mishtei chalis, from the 2 chalis that are brought on shuas, the shtei chalis that are brought on shuas, which is a korban tzibur, he can take one of the 2. He can take one of the 2, which would imply that he gets 50%. So we'll see in a moment. Or 4 or 5 from the lechem hapanim. The lechem hapanim, the 12 loaves of bread that were on the shulchan, they were on the shulchan the entire week. On Shabbos, they were changed for new ones, and the ones that were there the prior week are divided amongst the kahanim. As we'll see shortly, 2 of the 12 were not divided, according to one opinion, and therefore there would be a division of 10. So it says that therefore he gets 4 or 5 from the 10, which would imply that he gets either 50% or less than 50%. So the Gemara will explain shortly. But Rabbi Omer, he says, Lo'elam Chamish, he always takes 5. Shenemar v'haisa l'Aaron o l'Avonim. It should be for Aaron, the lechem upon him should be Aaron Akain, and for his children, Mechsa l'Aaron and Mechsa l'Avana, which means it's divided equally, 50%. So there's a division of 10 chalas. The Kohen Gadol gets 5. He gets 50%. In fact, the Gemara Hagel for Kasha, Amrat Noitel Chalach Mishtei Chalas. It says from the 2 chalas of Shavuos, he takes 1. So that implies that he gets 50%. Money, who's that according to Rebbe Damar Pagashakya. That would seem to imply that it's going like Rebbe, who says the Kohen Gadol takes 50%. But the next case says of the Brisa, it says that he takes 4 or 5 from the lechem upon him. That apparently is going according to Shiz Rabbanan, says he doesn't take 50% because he only takes 4 or 5. So we'll see shortly in Gemara what the 4 or 5 means, why 4 or 5, but in any event, it seems to be that it's going not according to Rebbe. It's going according to the Rabbanan. Ema Seifa, that's the last case, Rebbe Aimer Lo Elam Chamesh. Rebbe says they always get 5, they get 50%. So Reisha v'Seifa, Rebbe Mesios Rabbanan. Are we going to say that the Reisha and the Seifa is Rebbe and Mesios is a Rabbanan? It would be very inconsistent for the Tana to go and switch opinions. Amar Abai says Reisha Mesios Rabbanan. Really, I'll tell you that the Reisha and the Mesios is going according to the Rabbanan. In both cases, it's going according to the Rabbanan. So, if that's the case, it's according to the Rabbanan, why by the Shtei Chalas of Shuas, why would the Kohen Gadol take 1? He's taking 50%. However, Umayd Rabbanan b'prusa the lav urachar lamisve the Kohen Gadol. But the might of the Rabbanan, even though, meaning Al Pi Taisus, the Pshat is, even though they hold this lav urach ara for the Kohen to take 50%, to take as much as all the rest of the Kohanim, but it's more lav urach ara for a Kohen Gadol to be given a piece. So therefore, if he would be given less than 50%, he would be only given a prusa, a piece. Therefore, in this case, by the shtei lechem, he gets 1 of the chalas. But in the case where they're dividing up the lechem upon him, it's not a piece; it's a whole lechem. It's a whole challah. Therefore, the Rabbanan say he gets less than 50%. and therefore he gets either 4 or 5. We'll see why the 5, but it's either 4 or 5, and therefore it's also going according to the Rabbanan. The Seifa is Rabbi. Rabbi says, Lo Olam, he takes Chomish, he takes 50%, he takes 5. Now the Gemara explains, Umay Arba Chomish, what does it mean 4 or 5? Why should it be 4 or 5? So the Gemara explains, L'Rabbanan da'amri nichnas noitel sheish yoytze noitel sheish, then uschar hagavas losais loi b'shtemesrei by miflik. There's a machlokes in Masechet Sukkah if we divide up the 10 chalas or the 12 chalas. Now, according to the Rabbanan, they say that we do not give any wages to the Kohanim, the Mishmar that's entering, that's coming in for the coming week, and even though they have to close the gates and close the doors of the Azorah, they're not given any extra wages for that. They're not given extra chalukah from the Lechem Upanim. So therefore, according to the Rabbanan, you're dividing up 12 chalas, not 10 chalas, 12 chalas. So according to them, then 50% would be 6. However, the Rabbanan say the Kohen Gadol doesn't get 50%; he gets less than 50%. So, according to the Rabbanan, therefore, 50% would be 6. He gets one less; he gets 5. So that's where it would be 5. So the Rabbanan the Mishmar that comes in, the coming in Mishmar takes 6 chalas from the 12. The one that's departing takes 6. They divide up all of the chalas, and there's no special wages, no special extra chalas given to the incoming mishmar for compensation for closing the doors of the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, the Kohen Gadol will get 5. So, Batzer Charami Palga, you subtract 1 from the 50%. 50% would be 6, so you subtract 1, it's 5. Chamesh Shakel, so he gets 5. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says the Mishmar that comes in takes 7. Meaning, they add an extra 2 chalas for the wages compensation for closing the doors. So therefore, they get you take the 10, out of the 12 chalas, 10 are divided, so there's 50%, so that's 5 and 5, but the incoming mishmar takes an extra 2, so from the 12, they take 2, then they take 2, the remaining 10 is divided, they take 50% of that, so they get a total of 7. So they get 7, 2 for closing the doors, and the one that's departing, the mishmar that's leaving, they get 5. So therefore, me'eser by miflag, the Kohen Gadol would take his portion out of the 10. 2, that's separate. That's not part of the division of the chalas. That's compensation. That's wages, so to speak, for the incoming mishmar to the locking and the closing of the doors. So really, the division of the chalas are from 10. The Kohen Gadol would take 50%. He would take 5. Batzer chada mipalga. Then subtract 1 because according to the Rabbanan he gets less than 50%. So therefore, batzer chada mipalga, subtract 1 from the half is shakel harba. So half would be 5. Reduce it by 1. He gets 4. So that's the pshat 4 or 5. It's going according to the Rabbanan that says the Kohen Gadol gets less than 50%. If you hold that the division is 12 chalas, so 50% would be 6, then they will get 1 less, he gets 1 less, it's fine. If you say that no, they only divide 10 chalas because 2 is for Hagavas Losais, 50% would be 5, he gets 1 less, it's 4. So that's how Abaye explains the Brisa. Rava says that Kula Rabbi. He says that no, it's all going according to Rebbe. That is 50%. So therefore, out of the 2 chalas of Shuas, he gets 50%, he gets 1. Now, why do we say by the Lechem upon him it's 4 or 5? The some are like Rabbi Yehuda, and he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that the 2 chalas are for the incoming mishmar, that for the Hagavas Losses, Therefore, the division is only 10, and therefore the Kohen Gadol should get 5. He should get 5. So why is it 4 or 5? If it's going according to Rebbe, he should get 5. One case is where there's a mishmar that's misaki that stays in Yerushalayim on account of Yom Tov, which we'll explain in a minute. Meaning that we say the Kohen Gadol only takes 4 chalas, that's when there's a mishmar misaki. They're only dividing 8 chalas. From the 12 chalas, like we mentioned, if we're going according to Rabbi Yehuda, says that 2 of them are for the compensation for the mishmar that's coming in that does not cover losses. So that remains 10. Now 2 are subtracted as we divide it for the mishmar that's misaki. So Hadika mishmar misaki, that's where the division is from 8 and he only takes 4. Hadaleka mishmar misaki. When there's no mishmar misaki, they're dividing 10 chalas, so he gets 50%, he gets 5. If there's a mishmar that stays over, then they divide 8 v'shakal arba. The Kohen Gadol gets 4. Like a mishmar misake, but if there's no mishmar misake, me'aser boilam miflag, they're dividing 10 chalas v'shakal chomesh, and he takes 5. What's a mishmar misake? If Yom Tov is somach to Shabbos, so meaning if Yom Tov ends either on a Friday or starts on a Sunday, so for the Kahanim to come to the Beis HaMikdash, to Yerushalayim, they would have to be there for Shabbos, either stay over or come before Shabbos. On the Regel, all the Kahanim came. They didn't have the rotation of the Mishmoros that they had during the year, where there was different Mishmoros every week. On the Regel, they all came and they all did the Avodah. So if Yom Tov ended on a Friday, they didn't have enough time to go home. Or if it started on a Sunday, they would have to come before Shabbos. They wouldn't be able to, obviously couldn't travel on Shabbos. They couldn't be there on Sunday, they would have to come before Shabbos. So they share in the Lechem Aponim, in the division of Lechem Aponim. But if Yom Tov ended on a Thursday or started on a Monday, theoretically they would have time either to go home or come before Yom Tov. But since it's very close to Shabbos, it's difficult. If they did decide either to stay or to come early and to come before Shabbos, and that therefore, if they were there for Shabbos, there was an allocation of the Lechem Aponim for them. They didn't divide equally, but 2 of the 12 chalas were therefore divided and allocated to those mishmars. So if there was a mishmar, there was a mishmar misakev, then they're only dividing 8 chalas, the Kohen Gadol got 4. If there was no mishmar misakev, they divided 10 chalas, the Kohen Gadol get 5. So that's how Rabbi wants to explain it. Lo'olam it's Rabbi, and then even though the Sefer says that Rabbi says Lo'olam Chomesh, but it means to say that it is 4 or 5 because Rabbi says that you get 50%. In fact, the Gemara, how can you say it's Rabbi Yahachi? My Rabbi Aimer Lo'olam Chomesh. How can you say that it's all Rabbi and Rabbi says Lo'olam Chomesh? It's always 5. What do you mean it's always 5? We just said that sometimes it's 4. So how can you say that the Mitzvah is going according to Rebbe and it's 4 or 5, and then Rebbe says it's always 5? Sometimes it's 4. Kasha, it's a kasha. Now, as we mentioned earlier, it would be mashma that from the Lechem Aponim, that according to Rebbe, Kohen Gadol gets 50%, or from the Shtei Lechem he gets 50%. And the Rabbanan say that the Lechem Haponim, it's less than 50%. There's a division of less than 50%. What would be by the Korbanos? So the Lashon is mashma that by the Chatas, by the Asham, that he can take whatever he wants, meaning even all of it. So there's different opinions as to what the division is. That some hold, Zevach Taida holds, that it's the 50% applies also to the Chatas and the Asham. And it's across the board. It's a 50% rule, either 50% or less than 50%. The Taisa Rosh says no, that there is a chilik between a Korban Yachid and Korban Sibor, that by the Korban Sibor, he's not entitled to more than 50%, but a Korban Yachid, a Chatas Amri, he can take the whole thing if he wants. Others differentiate differently. The Ravid says is that there's a difference if it's like we mentioned in the Gemara by a prusa. We mentioned in the Gemara that according to the Rabbanon, even the Rabbanon hold by the Shtei Lechem that the Kohen Gadol gets one of the two, even though it's 50%, because it's love work hard to get a piece. So therefore, he holds that where they're dividing up and chales, which are separate chales entities, there we say that he is entitled to 50% or less than 50%, but not all of it. But by the basa, where they're all prusais, if you give him a 50% or less than 50%, it's a prusa. There we give him the whole thing. We give him all of them. He's entitled to all of them, and if he wants. The Meiri is machalik, whether he is taking it all for himself, where therefore he would be allowed to, or if he's dividing up amongst the other Kohanim, if he's dividing amongst the other Kohanim, then his portion of it is only 50% or less, either up to 50% or less than 50%. The Aruch HaShulchan holds that when we talk about the division, the Kohen Gadol can only take it for himself or for his household, but he's not entitled to take it to divide it with other Kohanim. In any event, he can't divide with them. I mean, it's not given to him as a monetary right. It's given to him for personal consumption. So he can take it to eat it for himself and for his household, but he cannot divide it amongst the other Kohanim.